Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Niles, Urban Ag Contractor for South Dakota Specialty Producers Association. Thank you for joining us in Knowing Your Options with guest Gaina Watson. This webinar has been funded under the Conservation Collaboration Agreement between the Natural Resource Conservation Service, which is known as NRCS, and South Dakota Specialty Producers Association, SDSPA, to promote sustainable agriculture practices and environmental stewardship. Its contents are solely the responsibility of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official views of the USDA or the NRCS. Welcome, Jana. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Everyone
Excellent.
else doing well. Hopefully it's a beautiful fall day where everyone else is.
Oh, it is a beautiful fall day. Good day to learn about zoning and planning.
Exactly.
So I will give the power to you and we will get started.
Okay. Let's see. Want to make sure. Do you see a screen share here? Some slides? Or should I go ahead and launch from this side?
Yeah, go ahead and start from that side.
Okay. Okay, we may need to run the PowerPoint from your side, Melissa. So
I can do that.
whatever, I'll just tell you when to click for the next. Okay. Sorry for the slight delay, everybody. There we go. Okay, first one. All right, great. Thanks everybody for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about zoning issues and knowing how that affects your operations. And my name is Jana Watson. I am an AICP, which is an American Institute of Certified Planners. And that particular organization certifies that my ethical standards and professional advice to you is of the highest known and best practice in the United States. So it's an important thing for me to let you know that, because you're getting really that level of service in this particular dialogue. I am a former planning director in the city of Spearfish. I was there until 2022, but then I retired and kind of struck out on my own. I help local governments and also private individuals who are trying to navigate the zoning process. I'll have some contact information for you at the very end here. But today, this is going to be some fun and learning about what planning and zoning actually is, how it impacts you, and what you can do to get yourself through a process that you're probably pretty unfamiliar with. And I do, like I said, I have my phone and email info at the very end in case you do need to reach out to me, because I do prepare applications for others as well. So today's objectives are, we're going to start with the legal foundations of what land use regulation is in South Dakota. Then we'll look at some approval types and knowing which one you need. And that's about a 3-step process. The next, how to put together your application to whether you're in county or city jurisdiction. And then last, what to expect after you've applied. So next slide, please. Okay. All right, the 2 legal foundations that you don't need to memorize or know, but you might want to come back to this later, and that is in the late 30s and early 40s, the state legislature gave cities and counties the ability and the authority to regulate what you do on your land through zoning, essentially is the adopted method. So these are permissive ordinances or permissive statutes, not mandates. And as you'll see in the first section under the county statute, it says that the county may adopt a zoning ordinance that governs the location of buildings, structures, land for trade, industry, etc. And again, same language for the cities. So if you're inside of a municipal limits, same thing is true, that the governing body may regulate the location, use of building structures and land for trade, industry, and residences for floodplains. So these powers are granted to the localities by the legislature. And this was a trend in the United States after some landmark Supreme Court cases in the 20s and 30s across the United States. This is important and a very important feature because sometimes you're going to run into situations where the city or the county does not have zoning adopted, but they're treating you as if they do, where they can essentially regulate or govern how you use your property. And so next click, please. That's when you might have to involve the A-team here. So if anyone got any Suits fans out there, I love this series, but attorneys really only are necessary when it comes down to the fact that you believe that the cities or the counties are operating outside of their authority. And I hope that never has to be the case, but frankly, sometimes it is. So next slide, please. Let's talk about what a zoning ordinance actually is. So a zoning ordinance consists of two documents. Document number one is a map that describes in general terms how land is permitted to be used. Most zoning codes have basically 4 categories, although more complicated, the bigger cities, more urban areas, they have many zoning districts, but the basic 4 are ag, residential, commercial, and industrial. And inside of each zoning district on the map, it relates to the zoning ordinance text we'll talk about in a minute. So let's go to the next slide, which is the zoning map. So every city, every county has, if they have adopted zoning, they have a map that basically describes where land uses are allowed. So in this particular example, I don't even know where it's from, but it just kind of gives you an idea of what they look like. The yellow is the single family area. The red is the looks like single family and duplex area. The orange is multifamily apartments. Green, commercial, and commercial can mean anything from like a downtown Main Street type of commercial to something you see on a major highway. The blue here is industrial, and then the purple is the heavy industrial. So this one has a couple of zoning types. So part 1 of the zoning code is the map, and the map shows what land uses generally are located and where. Next slide. Document 2. This is the written rules for each zoning district shown on the map. So this is a book, and sometimes it's published on the web. It's in text form, and it shows and it describes what is allowed for each land use. So I'm going to pick on agriculture for a minute because that's kind of the primary focus here, although some of you may be zoned residential. But in your zoning ordinance, these are the written rules that say what is permitted to be used in that zoning district. So ag is pretty obvious: livestock, vineyards, cropland, barns and buildings, primary home, that type of thing. So we have the land use. What is the allowed use of the property? That's part 1 of the zoning code. And then there's also some specifics in terms of lot dimensions, minimum sizes and acreages of the lot, distances between buildings, distances between uses if they are going to create impacts like noise and odor. And then last is the approval process for the project approval. So you have the map and the written text supporting the colors on the map. Alrighty, next slide. Alrighty, so we're going to go through 3 easy to me, maybe not so much for you, steps, but that's what I'm here to do, is help walk you through, and we'll do Q&A at the end. So step 1, this is where you are the expert. You need to write down everything about your business if you're getting ready to submit for some kind of a approval from a county or city. Write down everything as it relates to the use of the property in the business sense. How big is the property? How many buildings do you have now? Do you plan more for the future? Do you have outside storage, and where is it located, or is it in a building? Do you store raw materials? Do you have areas where there's some special uses that could possibly be an eyesore where you want to maybe have to put a fence around it, that type of thing. You need to describe what kind of processing you do, what sort of harvesting is done, when is it done? Is it done inside or outside? Any of you who are in the marijuana grow business, this is a really big deal because now, of course, we have, even though recreational failed, medical weed growing is still out there. So the processing part of that is important. How many people do you employ if you have employees? How many trips do you have in and out of the property every day? Do you have heavy equipment coming in and out all the time, or is it just the occasional UPS driver? So try to describe how many vehicle trips you have. And then the last part is noise, smoke, odor, dust. If yes, is it actually, oops, little typo there, is it more than what the surrounding properties produce? So what you're trying to do is quantify in descriptive terms what your business is about, because you're going to need this later. Okay, next slide. Alrighty, step 2, you're going to become your own detective. And this is where you are going to be gaining knowledge and information so that when you come into the process, you already have an insider's perspective on what the process is all about. So the first thing you're going to do is call your county or city admin offices and ask them if they have zoning. This particular function, a zoning administration may be under a planning and zoning department, obviously, but not everybody has an actual planning and zoning department. Some come under different, either planning and zoning, community development. Some are under public works, some are auditor or finance, and even some are under equalization. And if you call any of these areas, just simply say you want to speak with someone about zoning. That's your first question. So next slide, click. Don't be like these guys. You are going to be an expert. You will know, and I'm going to give you some tools so you cannot walk in here and say, next click, please. What do I need to do? I'm not sure where to start, but you won't need that those words, because I'm going to give you a new script. So next please. Here is your script, and you can copy this verbatim so you can practice what you're going to say when you make your phone call. So I'm calling up my city planner or my county planner, and I'm going to ask, or if you can email too, does the city or county have an adopted zoning map and ordinance? Question 1. And if yes, what is the zoning on my property? So write that down. So you're going to start a notebook here, obviously, of what's my business, what am I doing, and what is my zoning? And then after, if they say yes, then you need to ask the second question. Can you please send me the written regulations and requirements of my zoning? And then thirdly, and related, where do I see a zoning map? So you're going to, instead of, I don't know where to start, I don't know where to begin, this is your beginning, okay? This is where you walk in to the process and begin to become really an expert in planning and zoning without having the 4-year degree behind you. So if the city or county does not have zoning, then some will say, good for you, keep on going the way you're going. But you do need to verify with them, is there any kind of permit needed to describe your activity? Do I need a special permit to raise bees? Do I need you need to be really careful with this question, because it really should be under the guise of building permitting. Because if they're not managing you through zoning, then they can't really tell you you can't have a bee operation or you can't have a vineyard. Those are land use issues. So if they don't have zoning, it's more of the technical permitting and that type of thing. And then the next thing you need to ask is, where do I see the list of things that I need to submit for permits? So we're asking them, do you have zoning or don't you? Where can I see the text of my zoning district? And where can I see the list of things I need to submit? Okay, next slide. Okay, we're still in detective mode. So once they send you the links or the information that describe your zoning district, you need to look at that list and you need to figure out what land use on that list best describes you. So there's 3 types of permitted uses essentially in zoning. It's the primary permitted. These are guaranteed land use rights, staff level of approval. You don't need anything special from a board to do a primary or permitted use. If you're building a building, you'll probably have to get a building permit, but if there's not anything out of the ordinary in the primary permit use list, then these are guaranteed land use rights, and all you have to do is comply with their technical requirements for buildings. Another category kind of sounds like the one before. It's called permitted special uses. These are also guaranteed rights if specific conditions are met. For example, some jurisdictions will, let's use beekeeping for a moment. They maybe don't necessarily describe beekeeping, but they talk a little bit about separations of between the use and an adjoining property line when it is a certain type of aviary or a beekeeping type of function that is maybe potentially impactful. You can still do it, but you have to have a certain distance. So that's a special permitted use. The last of the administrative type of approvals are those that are conditionally permitted, also called a conditional use permit, which kind of sounds like special permitted, but this is a little bit different one, and that is there is approval to the criteria, but it does require an elected or appointed official approval with hearings, and that gets into a little bit more of the public involvement. If you don't see a match on the zoning district that you're in, you need to change zoning. We'll talk about that in a minute. So next slide. So step 3, you're going to run a really good offense after today. So here's what you're going to say. You're going to do this in writing. Dear Planning Director, I'm the owner of Best Beanery. My company grows and harvests specialty beans for a local food co-op, and I'm seeking confirmation from you that the present zoning for my property located on County Road 12 is agriculture, and then my business is allowed as a primary, and I put asterisk there because you need to substitute some terms below if it applies, use, and requires no formal action by the county for land use approval before I get a building permit. Please see the attached description of my operations list from step 1. We already talked about that. So you attach the list to your letter, and you're asking them to confirm something for you. And when you get this back, scan it, save it, make multiple copies of it, put it in your safe. This is a very important document because you're getting the city or the county to make a commitment to you that they're not going to put you through a public hearing in order to do a primary permitted use. It's an allowed land use right. Now, the variation on that is after you look at your zoning ordinance, you see that you use as a special permitted, and it does require staff approval, just change that. And then the next thing is conditionally permitted, which does require the board approval. So you need to go into this showing the zoning administration that you understand what you're talking about, that you already have researched their codes, that you now have familiarity with some basic terms as we're talking about today. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, let's talk about rezoning. So if you don't see anything that matches the land use or business description in your present zoning, you're going to have to call or go back online or look at other zoning district descriptions. So you can call the county back and say, hey, or the city and say, hey, I see my particular business operation is not really clearly falling into any one category. I think I might need to change zoning. And then you have that conversation. So back to your letter, again, owner of the beanery, my company grows and harvests, and I cannot see that I have anything that would match, and I may need to rezone my property from its current designation as rural residential to agriculture. So you've already done your homework. You've looked back on the zoning ordinance districts, and maybe you found in a different zoning district. Again, this is how you establish process and expectations for how you go to the next step. Okay, next slide. Alrighty, something that you may hear from time to time is the word variance. Variances don't come to play unless you're trying to fix a rule in the code that you think doesn't really apply to you. For example, horizontal and vertical distances and standards, building setbacks, the distance to property line, maximum building height, percentage of lot that can be used for a function, parking requirements. It's measurable standards. It's not land use. And also they are based on hardship examples. So for example, you have a creek flowing through your property, forcing your building to one side or the other, and it has to come closer to a property line. Or maybe you have a condition on somebody else's lot that makes that particular regulation inapplicable. So those are the two essentially the foundations of variances. In red print in the bottom, I say a variance cannot be granted for land use. So you can't go in there and say, well, I'm doing this in my rural residential zoning district, but can I get a variance? That's not what variances do. You need to go back to the permitted use list, as we talked about earlier. Okay, next slide. So with all this, you're going to be like these two guys, Lewis and Billy Ray from the movie Trading Places. You're going to learn the rules, use them to your advantage, and like them, retire on a beach someplace. And even if it's on the Missouri River, there's lots of beaches. But I'm telling you these things because when you have this level of basic inside knowledge, you come to the game already prepared. All right, next. Let's put your application together. So here are the key points. You start with a pre-app meeting. This is a one-on-one review with a planning director. I would call and set these up. It's how you establish expectations for communication. You can figure out what approvals can be combined if you need more than one. They will tell you what to prepare if you have a public hearing you have to go to. Then they'll also give you a submittal checklist. And on this list usually there's maps, written info, deadlines, approximately meeting schedules, and a meeting to go over your application for completeness. And then the third element of your application is getting the landowner notice together. If the county or city gives you some instructions, follow them exactly. If they say certified mail notice goes to this many people, do it exactly that way and keep copies of everything. And involving landowner notice, if you've got to have a public hearing involving landowner notice, be proactive. Don't wait for them to get the notice from the county. You're already, behind the times there because you want to be the one initiating the information, not this random letter saying there's a hearing. There's an old saying that in the absence of information, people will make up their own. That is true whenever you're needing a public approval through a board. Next slide. All right, a lot of issues come up with, I don't know what I don't know. This is where you may need some help from other experts when the city or the county starts talking about drainage requirements and sewer and water. That's civil engineers. If they want boundaries and property lines, et cetera, that's where you get surveyors to create plats. Attorneys can help you review city and county rules and advise you as needed. Planners like me can help you with maps, written narrative information, outreach to your neighbors, and serve as project manager over the consultants. And they can also present for you at a meeting if public speaking just terrifies you, because we've got lots of hot air, and we can usually bore everyone to the point where they don't want to listen anymore. So another part of the tackling I don't know what I don't know is it's really important to hold the city and county staff accountable to their checklists. Because there's two types of checklists that I've seen in my career, and that is that created by ordinance. If you crack open the ordinance, it says these are the things you must submit. When you want to look at those submittal information, you have to argue based on compliance with the ordinance itself. Whereas if it's just a policy, that is a preference, and you can negotiate back based on if it's really necessary. So there's two levels of checklist accountability, if you will, that cities and counties. This way you don't get into a situation where they're asking you to do a humongous traffic study, and that's just of their policy. You can certainly negotiate through that. Next slide. All right, what to expect when you're expecting an approval. So point one, transparency matters. I love quotes from Bear Bryant. He's the legendary coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. And he said once, in a crisis, don't hide behind anything or anyone. They're going to find you anyway. I think this is true. You have to disclose everything because it's just it's such a derailment and difficulty to recover when you don't. Review times, anytime you're dealing with a staff approval, it's about 4 to 6 weeks. If you're getting an approval by a board or an elected or appointed board, it's about 6 to 8. The people in review on the city or county end are going to be planners like me, engineers, attorneys, and then elected and appointed officials if it has to go to public hearing. They actually just review the staff findings. Revisions to your plan, you're always going to have to make some changes, so expect them. Be reasonable and really know on, beforehand, what hill are you going to die on here? Because sometimes there's things that are, even though they're inconvenient or maybe they cost a little bit extra money for you to put together, you have to just weigh out how important that really is to oppose something. But things that and when it comes to your operation on your business, don't back down, understand that going in. Okay, next slide. Okay, in all of your interactions with county staff and city staff, obviously cooperation is key. They do have the authority to work you and walk you through the process and work with you. And you need to be ready to seek advice as needed from an attorney or an engineer. And again, that's an investment in your business. So sometimes you just can't DIY that kind of stuff. And when there's a disagreement with staff or officials, present the facts. Show them where their assumptions are wrong with your facts, because you know your business better than anyone, and you can certainly defend it from that point of view. In your interactions with county elected or appointed officials, I love this quote: "Nobody is completely useless. They can always serve as a bad example." And I think this is true because South Dakota has some case law out there where owners, well-intended, had done something that they essentially had their approval revoked, which I can talk about that in a minute. Work everything through the staff member. Share all application-related information with everyone. And if you have to do a conditional use permit in the state of South Dakota, they have a term that applies to this. It's quasi-judicial, which means it's like court. It's like presenting facts and evidence and discovery, and you have to send that through the staff member. Ex parte communications are always a problem in a setting like that. So, and for an example, in that meeting, when you have to go to a public hearing, officials must disclose everything, every conversation, everything that they learn, maybe from you, has to be made public. So here's a don't offer your best friend commissioner a private tour to see the property. Do invite the staff, the entire commission, and make sure that public meeting and notice is covered. And staff could guide you on that. There was a case in the eastern part of the state concerning an ethanol plant, and this is many years ago, where a commissioner on his own visited an operation, and the entire decision, the approval, was invalidated because there was lack of that uniform information sharing amongst the commissioners. So just keep that in mind. All right, next. Avoid the blind side. And this is where I think, it's very common to get frustrated, but griping to others on what's going on in the city county review is going to really hurt you. Stay off social media. In case you missed it, stay off social media. Don't take your concerns to the public. Keep them with a trusted friend, your attorney, your legal advisor, punch a pillow, do anything but broadcast your concerns to others who have nothing to do with your case. It may feel good to vent, and you probably need that, but be careful with that. Next slide. So in public meetings, you got to really choose your image wisely. So next click. You can show up looking like this, which, that's probably, it probably works for South Dakota, but you're trying to sell yourself. So next click. Do this. Everybody likes a well-dressed man, sharp-dressed man. So show up to the meeting ready to present yourself as, one who's there to answer questions and get the job done, because you are an expert. Okay, next slide. When the chair gives you an opportunity to speak, don't go up there and say, well, staff pretty much said what I was going to say. Don't do that. you need to sell it. You need to talk about things that the community benefits from, the people you employ, the community activities you're supporting through your own financial success. Share facts, dispel myths and fears and other objections, especially if you're in the weed business. A lot of the fears about marijuana production and grow, et cetera, can really be addressed if people are armed with facts. Okay, next. All right, almost done here. We can go to questions in just a minute. So if you're needing a building permit, you first have to figure out what version of the code does the city or county follow. Ask them for their submittal checklist and hold the staff to it. Turnaround time varies. Some jurisdictions can turn around a building permit in 10 days. Some are 4 to 6 weeks out. So plan that into your project schedule. Another permit that catches a lot of folks off guard is the state Department of Ag and Natural Resources. If you're disturbing over an acre on the site, you need a stormwater pollution prevention permit. Basically, you describe methods to prevent soils from washing off site and polluting nearby water sources. Now, cropland and ag activities are exempt, but if you're going to be grading for a building and getting site prepped for outside storage, a residence, equipment parking, trenching for utilities, if it's over an acre, you're going to need to submit for this permit from the state. And as I described, it's just a heads up to them of what you're doing and how you're going to protect offsite waterways from being hit with rainwater that carries a ton of soil into a lake or a stream, et cetera. If you're working with USDA or NRCS, they can also assist you with this process. But here's some information here on the slide. Katie Adair at the state is a great reference and resource for you. She's got a 1-800 number for you to call, and you can just run anything past her. So, all righty, next slide. So I love football shows, football movies. This is We Are Marshall. And this is how the mindset you need to adapt when you go into these public approval processes. Lay it on the line until the final whistle blows. And if you do that, we cannot lose. We may be behind on the scoreboard at the end of the game, but if you play it like that, we cannot be defeated. So keep on doing it, work it, learn it. If you have questions, like I said, I've got some contact info. So next click. So be proactive. Knowledge is power. Do your homework. Act like the expert you are. And don't freak out. If something just is not going well, sleep on it, take an overnight to figure it out, work with the staff, call someone like me, and we can certainly help you. So we can now do some Q&A, and below is my contact information. In case y'all need to reach out, you can reach through Melissa or call me direct or whatever you like to do. So any questions that I can answer, things we didn't cover. Nobody? You seeing anything on your end, Melissa, for anyone who wants to ask any questions? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything here, but okay. We can certainly, if I get any questions submitted to me, I can certainly forward them on to you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And like I said, we covered a lot in not very much time, and I realize that is quite a bit. But if you follow those 1, 2, 3 steps, you should be successful. And I work on a consultant basis as well to help prepare applications, and I can coach you through it. I can do whatever level you'd like me to do. So anyway, thanks for joining. I hope you learned something. And if you have any other follow-up, please do let me know.
Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate your time and knowledge on zoning and planning. If you guys have any further questions, please reach out to her, or if you need her contact information, please reach out to me. This is a special project from the South Dakota Specialty Producers Association working with NRCS. We thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.
Okay. Talk to you later. See you.
See you.